How are
Thanks for
you?
joining us.
Pleasure. Yes. I mean, I either know what I'm talking about or I don't. And if I don't, I'll say I don't know. But if you're asking me about my children, I don't need to rehearse. And and when we're talking about the automobile industry, it's as if you're talking to me about my children. I don't need a lot of practice, I mean,
Okay.
and that
I
doesn't
agree with you.
that doesn't mean I know everything, certainly not, but I know what I know, and then
Well, of course, our disclaimer is, of course, the opinions today are the views of our guests, you, not necessarily us. And even though we may agree with you, but neither that or the show or Ian or myself.
Yep. And then basically the show tomorrow is the OEM. Will the OEMs change retail, which we know has been kind of a hot button issue lately, especially with Ford and others going, well, we have electric cars and we're going to change the model. What does that mean? Well, no one really knows, but it's definitely an interesting conversation. I don't know how much you know about me and Jeff, but you probably know more about me than Jeff, so maybe Jeff can talk a little bit about him.
Sounds good. I've been in the industry a long, long time. I had hair when I started, and
me too.
yeah, I only admit to 30 years and been, both domestic import stores and everything from salesperson to GM, et cetera, used car guy. And now I'm doing this, and I've got a piece of a used car lot just outside of Vancouver, BC.
And I've got a family history in the business. I worked for a Honda store in the local market here, originally from Toronto, but I worked for a Honda store here, which at the time was one of the largest in Canada, for close to 10 years. And I've worked with dealers for 10 years in various industries. And I'm a co-host of the Auto Show. We've been doing it almost 3 years. My focus has always been customer experience, transparency as has yours been and is. And I met you the first time, I believe, in Las Vegas when the gentleman in charge of Subaru, it was Ford Motor Company, was speaking. You put your hand up and said, you're looking for a new job because Honda needs some help.
That would be, oh my gosh, what is Scott? What is Scott's last name?
Is it Monty?
Scott Monty, exactly that. My God, I can't believe. And Scott is was a brilliant marketer, way ahead of his time when he was with Scott. Yeah.
And your speech was, by the way, fantastic as well. But I thought that was it.
I appreciate that. It was not, Scott Monty was not an easy act to follow.
Yeah, I mean, he was interesting because I think he was the first Ford dealer or first manufacturer to tweet back to people. Yeah. Which people thought was nuts at the time.
Elon Musk gets a lot of credit for being accountable to the shareholders, and Scott was doing it a long time before. And of course, he came out with some great campaigns that were 100% digital, and they did better than the multi-million-dollar television campaigns, his digital campaigns they did. So he was way out ahead. And I remember a dear friend of mine, Sean Wolfington, at the time said, pay attention to him. Scott was there with his little bow tie and everything, but Scott was, he had a lot of substance behind that bow tie.
Yeah, I remember him talking in the speech going, if someone had told me 2 years ago that I'd be working in Detroit for an automotive manufacturer, I would have said they were freaking nuts.
Yeah, and by the way, he worked with or under Alan Mulally.
Yeah.
So that crew was a pretty damn bright crew there. So he was part of a great period of time and growth for the Ford Motor Company.
Unfortunately, Mark Fields was part of that group too, and he kind of proved that quickly.
Yeah, there's a lot of bright in that room.
And maybe, Brian, you can tell us a little bit about your background for the people that don't know.
I started out in the automobile business on May the 10th, 1982. So this May, I'll be 40 years. And I'm blessed. I'm blessed to have my children with one wife, and I'm blessed to have my career with one organization. And some might call me a tree hugger for staying in one place for so long. And I made a simple rule many years ago. The day I can't grow at Paragon is the day I'll be gone. And, this industry has been changing so much over so many years. I've been blessed to be able to stay loyal to my company and to continue to grow my career. And so I'm very thankful for that.
Appreciate that.
You know, it's a great combination. That it's pretty rare as a person who's loyal to the company, and a company who's loyal to the person.
Yeah, it's been a wonderfully symbiotic relationship between myself and the Singer family and American Honda and Acura. There's so many dynamics, and so many young people want to get into business today. They want to be on their own, and I've never worked for more people than since I became a partner. You work for of course, your partner. You work for and with the manufacturer. You work for and with your staff. You work for and with the Attorney General. You work for and with Consumer Affairs, and you work for and with, of course, your consumers. So I'm a servant to a lot of different masters, and I think people, when they think about being an owner and how glorious it is, and it is, it has certain benefits, but I think those of us that have been around a long time understand our servant role in serving these different masters that we're blessed to serve.
Fantastic. Do you want to start, Jeff, with questions, or do you want me to start?
Sure, by all means. So, Brian, the topic of the show tomorrow, and of course this show today, is will the OEMs change retail? And a couple of months ago, we decided to do the show because there was an article, and it was both on LinkedIn and also on the various platforms, Automotive News, etc., that Mercedes in Europe is looking towards changing the model, where they're going to go to a manufacturer-driven sales channel, and then the dealerships will become their distribution and service centers.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who it was, but somebody posted a question on LinkedIn and created a tremendous amount of questions and comments. And of course, just like anything, there's comments like, "Yeah, that's great. That sucks. They're out to take us over."
Uh-huh.
And this prompted a lot of discussions with people we talked to.
Yeah.
So, the feeling is that could come here, especially from the manufacturers that are pushing that. And frankly, here in Canada is no different than the States. We're just a little further spread apart. What's your opinion? Where's that going?
Well, when you say the manufacturers here could, what are you talking about? It's the same manufacturers. And in fact, I was blessed to speak for Spain's version of NADA about 4 weeks ago in Spain. And you said it could come to Europe. It's already there. Mercedes-Benz has all but taken over the dealer body there, using electrification as a way to circumvent the franchise system there. And the franchise system there is arguably much weaker than the franchise system here. And I've spoken to dealers here that are pretty cocksure that can't happen here. And I wonder if in fact they're right. I do believe in many states the franchise laws are stronger here than in Europe, and I certainly don't know enough about the European laws to make that statement, but I perceive that the franchise laws here are stronger. But I look at the amazing and incredible job that Elon Musk has done circumventing, piercing the franchise laws here. And I think many manufacturers will use the path, the trail blazed by Mr. Musk to circumvent the franchise laws here in the States that they can do that.
Interesting. Yeah, I was at NADA this year and at the AWA Awards, and Mr. Pash was talking about Ford because he had a meeting with all the OEMs in the room, and I think Stellantis was a big one pushing different technological solutions. And he was talking about Ford specifically, and he hit exactly what you said. He said, okay, their electric model is this, different corporation, this is what they're doing. What they don't want to talk about is trade-in value, finance products, and service revenue. But they are already talking about, well, we'll pay you X to deliver an electric car that, by the way, is ordered from our website. We'll tell you who's coming to pick them up.
Yeah, keep in mind, Ford has been, I love what Ford has done, and we were just talking before the show started about some of the people that we know in common that have worked for Ford. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the Ford Motor Company, but let's face it, they've been trying to get rid of dealers for decades. This is no secret, and if they can use electrification to do it, I think they will. So the dealers need to remind them of that the need, right, for the several thousand points of light that the Ford dealers represent for Ford, and servicing the customers is an incredibly important part of that, right? Jobs to be done. The job to be done is not sell the car and it's over. That's where the job starts, right? So it's to find, serve, and to keep those customers. And if Ford forgets the important role that dealers play in that, I think long term it'll be a disaster for them. People are looking at the Tesla business model and saying, look at all the money and look at the valuation of the corporation. And what OEM wouldn't want that for them? Well, it's a very separate set of circumstances that allowed that to happen. I think the hybrid model would be really, and we're going to see Tesla move to the dealer model and the franchise model. And so just as the OEMs are trying to throw it out, think of Amazon, right? Amazon got rid of as many bookstores as they can, and then they started building bookstores. And so we can fast forward to that, work with us. We're the points of light. We're the contact point with the customers. You've got that network already established, and I think we can do a very good job. And one other thing I'll add, that initially I envision, and I don't have insider information, but I envision that they would give the dealers a reasonable profit for delivering the car. And I envision that every year, once that network is established, that margin will go down lower and lower and lower. So, they're going to try and match ideal circumstances now somewhat to get the dealers to swallow that pill, to put the pacifier in the dealer's mouth, as it were. And then each year, that delta, that margin, that what they're going to give the dealer, I think would be cut short. So I think the dealers need to put the yellow caution flag out. And I had the pleasure of Thursday night sitting at a restaurant, and a Ford dealer in the New York market sat down next to me. We were having this exact conversation, and he was a little bit too short. No, we're good. It can't happen here. Won't happen here. Won't happen in New York. And the restaurant we were having dinner at was, very close in proximity to a Tesla dealership that was in a shopping center that I was told that can never happen here in New York State. So be very careful about that smugness that we can have. Keep in mind, this is driven by two very strong factors, or three actually: electrification, the OEM's desire for many decades to get rid of the dealers, and the consumers. The consumers somehow think that going into a factory store and paying full price is a better customer experience.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because I had the opportunity years ago when both in the greater Toronto market and the greater Vancouver market, Mercedes-Benz owned virtually all the franchises. So essentially what happened is we set up a call center for them, and customers would call and they go, okay, like there's 6 Mercedes dealers, which one should I go to get the best price? And the call center agent would go, well, which one are you closer to? Knowing full well that they owned all the locations, the customer had no idea. So it was kind of interesting from that point of view, and they've since abandoned all those locations and sold them to a franchise dealer group because they found out that they weren't very good at managing retail people in a franchise that they own. So it was kind of interesting that you brought that up. But more importantly, what was really interesting recently was there's a mall near Vancouver in Richmond, BC, which has a very large Chinese population. And Tesla's been moving into that market because they like high-end vehicles of various types. But one of the Mazda stores at the Auto Mall near downtown in that suburb has built basically a Tesla model of their showroom in the mall, which is probably one of the best executed franchise model showrooms in a mall that I've ever seen. It was very well executed, and I've seen other people try, but essentially they're looking at it as another arm to their retail organization. So I think it's a wise pivot, personally.
Well, where Tesla's had an advantage, the dealers can't do what Tesla does. So the state laws need to change. Can I put a store in a mall? That's not a new idea, but I've been required to have a proximate service department there. And Tesla has no such requirement. So, hey, dealers can compete favorably with the Chinese, with the Teslas, and anybody else, and any other business model, provided we're playing on a level playing field. So, my advocacy is going to be do whatever's best for the consumer. Just make sure that we all get to do whatever's best for the consumer.
That's where Tesla's coming up short in the last few years, is that customer experience. I met a guy the other day, just took delivery of a Model 3, a base Model 3.
That's garbage.
Yeah, and he was, oh yeah. but he was so upset with the entire delivery process. He thought it was really cool. He ordered it online, da 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 da. It wasn't base. Come on. They came up with a base model and nobody bought it just so they could get around some certain rules.
Yeah. Hey, did you ever drive it? Did you ever drive one? I
Mm.
mean, my God, it's like sitting on a crate.
Horrible.
There's the soundproofing. You know, keep in mind our manufacturers have done a great job manufacturing fantastic cars. The key for Tesla has been the electric, the wow effect, and it's got a giant iPad on the screen. But
Yeah.
the car itself is basic. It's very basic. And you know, I've had several colleagues that when they got it, they were all super impressed with the acceleration. That's not Tesla. That's electrification. And so as the other manufacturers move over, I mean, I looked at the Porsche. What is it? Porsche sports car that's electric.
Take it.
Take it. What a car! That's
Absolutely.
it's fantastic. So you know, when I see companies, manufacturers like Porsche flexing its muscles. By the way, many of the Tesla engineers came from the Honda Motor Corporation. I was a Honda EV Plus dealer in the early 90s. So Honda's had and has some of the most advanced electric vehicles in the world sitting on the sideline right now. Honda will go in when it's the right time. And I think that's the right approach. Again, I spoke with another dealer yesterday who was saying, a Mercedes-Benz dealer in Long Island, New York, and he was saying, we have 7 of this Mercedes-Benz electric car, and nobody wants it. And you know, between the government and the manufacturers trying to stick these cars down our throats, we have to remember the demand has to be there, and putting the demand, putting the emphasis on the supply side, and hurrying up and building these things. The OEMs are going to see just how dependent they are on a strong dealer network when they build too many of these cars that people don't want. And you can't, and they won't be able to discount it enough to create demand. There's got to be demand there, so they need to just slow it down. Our cars right now are the most fuel efficient they've ever been. Let's do everything we can to move in a direction that improves the environment, and if that's electrification, great. I have some questions around that, but that's for a different show. Let's do it at a pace that makes sense. Let's let the infrastructure be there in advance, so the people that live in cities like New York City won't have to go out and buy a 3,000-foot long extension cord to charge their car and hang them out of apartment buildings. And maybe that's an exaggeration, but maybe it's not. The infrastructure is not there. Some of the OEMs have this wonderful idea of making the dealerships get multiple charging stations, and I think that's a great idea for service customers. I don't think customers or the customer experience will be enhanced by customers having to go to the dealership to charge their car once a week, once a day. I don't think that's a good customer experience.
100% agree. I saw one of the new Mercedes at a local dealer. The salesman, they had it hidden in a storage, place, because they're not even showing in the showroom, by the way. And I was like, well, it's a well-built car, but it's a quite expensive car, much like the Porsche. But at the end of the day, at least the Germans and the Japanese and others can build cars at scale.
Oh, come on. We know this already.
Yeah.
But the reality is there's an extra X amount of thousands of dollars in cost in the electric car.
Yeah.
The fuel savings it'll take you 200 years to get the benefit of the fuel savings. And to say to people, well, you're helping the environment, that's great. But when you have inflation where it's at right now, I think people have other pressing concerns. And I saw that Mercedes car, and I spoke with the salesperson, and he said, the lemon's not worth the squeeze to the consumers at this point. Forget about my opinion. Forget about your opinion. It's the consumer that counts. Tesla had the Elon Musk cool effect, and so the demand was there. But is the demand there right now for 17 million electric cars a year? And the answer is clearly not yet. Not anywhere near yet.
Yeah, I mean,
they're
New York
unaffordable.
City, what's your most popular dollar point car? Like, what is the most common car you sell at Paragon?
Boy, that's changing now, right? And probably somewhere about $32,000. When your Accords and your SUVs, and let's face it, I mean, this electrification. I wish somebody would just tell the truth. The electrification that the OEMs are forced to pivot to is causing amazing financial stress for all the OEMs. The OEMs are making that up by producing now the cars that are more expensive today. So we're seeing the average cost of transaction price go up. Again, you've got a couple of things playing into that. You've got a scarcity problem that's going on, and the OEMs now trying to get as much squeeze out of every transaction as they can by producing the more expensive models. And a public, uh, sneeze on the truth, a public that's right now willing to participate. But at some point between the inflation costs, fuel costs, the cost of the electric cars, at some point customers are going to start tapping out, and I think we're rapidly approaching that crossover.
Yeah, I mean, when I sold Hondas, we sold the original Insight, which was rated at 84 miles per British gallon, or 84. I also owned a CRZ for a while. I bought both these cars pre-owned just because customers had questions that the OEM refused to give me the answer to, so I drove them. And those cars were very, very efficient, but they weren't hugely popular, even in the market I'm in, which has a lot of interest in this stuff.
Well, that CRZ, had you put an ICE engine in the CRZ, we would have sold the stuffing out of it. A beautiful car, but the engine itself was it wasn't well received. And again, let's not forget, we've doubled the average fuel economy over the past 20 years for a car, thereby doubling the fuel supply. The cars are cleaner than ever before. And so, we don't have to rush into forcing this on the consumers. I don't think the government should be in charge of consumer demand. I think the consumers should be. And as we make better products, the consumers will naturally gravitate towards them. Better products that are better for the environment, I think that'll accelerate consumer demand for that. But I think forcing the consumers to buy those vehicles by making it more difficult to acquire ICE vehicles, I think that's a mistake.
So what do you think if you were to jump from being a dealer to working at the OEM? I know you're not going to do that, but if you were to jump with that mindset, what would you recommend the OEM do to adapt?
Well, I think the OEMs, and if I'm the OEM, I'm always going to want, the government should stay the heck out of our business. I'm sorry. I think the OEMs need to be monitoring consumer demand. If the governments, your respective government and our respective governments want to make it incredibly affordable for consumers through tax incentives, and they want to drive demand that way, I'm all in favor of that. They shouldn't force the OEMs to build cars that sit on consumers' lots and then force the OEMs to discount the cars through incentives, because again, you're hitting the consumers twice, right? Because the people that own these OEMs are consumers, right? The shareholders. So you're going to force the shareholders to subsidize the consumers. And I just don't think that that's a great thing to do. And I'm happy with the direction that I see coming out of Honda and Acura right now. Is we have it, we're ready, but we're going to go in one vehicle at a time. And I can remember my early days, and perhaps you can remember yours, with Honda, when Honda went from carbureted to fuel injected. And what they did was, in each model, they had a Civic SI, and that particular model had fuel injection. They had an Accord LX and an LXI, where they were introducing the fuel injection, and they introduced it in each of the different classifications that we had to gradually increase that as the acceptance of a fuel injected vehicle over a carbureted vehicle was achieved. So they didn't force the market on that. There was still some old timers at that time that said, no, carbureted is the way to go. I don't trust those fuel injected vehicles. And back in the day, there was a controversy about fuel injection. People were not quite sure, and obviously later on that's been overcome with time. So I think that the way that Honda had approached that in the past, and hopefully the way they approach electrification, introducing it one model at a time, I think would be the right approach.
And the same was true with ABS back in the day as well.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. I drove a European Prelude a year and a half or 2 years before Honda had it here, and they called it actually ALB, anti-lock brakes. And people, the first time you step on an ABS brake on the snow, and that pedal's pumping in your foot, and especially back then, it was a little bit more noticeable than it is today. What the heck is that? But I remember how cool it was to look at the snow prints and seeing the different tracks that had happened, and then realizing that technology has been out for quite a number of years prior to that in airplanes. And again, there was greater acceptance. And the same thing with airbags, they have one in a car, then two in a car, and so I think the gradual approach is the way to go.
I remember, see, you mentioned anti-lock brakes. I remember seeing that in 1974 Lincoln Mark IV, and there was this on the brake paddle, which was that big. There was this thing there that said anti-lock braking system, and it was like, what the heck's this? Mind you, those really needed it.
Yeah, they sure did. They sure did. And because you would step on the brakes, those things would lock up and you'd be in a spin. Unless, it'd be an instant spin on dry roads, let alone these.
Exactly. So, a question for you: what? And this is hypothetical, and you can certainly pass on answering this. If your manufacturer were to say to you, in 5 years, we're going to be doing this directly, and you're going to become delivery centers, how would you handle that?
Well, I don't have a problem with the concept, right? I think the Apple business model, the Tesla business model, there's some validity to that, and to the extent that the dealers need to be willing and flexible to change, I think the OEMs need to be willing and flexible to change. We need to look at that franchise agreement today and say, how can we adjust this, amend this, alter this to better serve our customers? And you look at, imagine being at NADA, and imagine Elon Musk being there, as crazy as that is. And imagine, Ian, you go up to Elon Musk and you say, hey, what DMS do you guys use? The guy would look at you like you're crazy, right? No. Oh, okay. Well, let me ask you a different question, Mr. Musk. What CRM do you use? And again, he'd look at you like you're out of your head, because all of that's contained in their platform for the customer so that they can serve the customers better. I would love to see the OEMs and the dealers share a platform where all of those points of light, all that information is shared so that we can better serve our customers. That's going to take a tremendous amount of restructuring. I believe, as I recall, Honda has 70 plus million customers in their overall database. Imagine the power of that information if we could use that information to better serve our customers without violating PII, right? The personally identifiable information. And so that Honda could give us information that people that change their front brakes at this frequency generally need to change their rear brakes at that frequency. People that do this tend to know that. And for us to have those data points so that when any customer entered into our information, our IMS, and I'm coining and changing a term, instead of a data management system, imagine if we had an intelligence management system. And so wherever in the dealership you entered the customer's information as the IMS, you had a world of information. People like this tend to do that so that we can better serve the customers. And it's not about having creepy information. It's just about really, the Google mantra: know me better, serve me faster, and wow me everywhere. And if I could give you information and say, Ian, people like you tend to do this, and why don't we take a look at some of these things, you would have the right to say, no, I'm not interested, or, oh, that's great. And how many times when it comes to Spotify, you pick a music, an album or something that says you may also like, and they show you 5 albums below, and sure enough, aren't you frustrated and angry that they're right? You do like those other 3 albums, because we all think it was so unique, and there are certainly patterns, and to be able to use those patterns to better serve the customers while protecting their right to privacy, I think would be a great opportunity for the OEMs to embrace by sharing some of that data with us. So you've got the data manufacturers have silos for their finance department, the service department, the sales department, and the used car department, and the customer. As far as the customer is concerned, they're a customer. When you're dealing with Honda, whether it be a dealer or the OEM, dealing with Honda, and so to be able to have that information, or a lot of the information, or lookalike information, to better serve the customer, I think would be of tremendous value.
Well, there's actually, there was a lady I saw I think it was on, anyway, some source the other day, and she was talking about these new Amazon stores where you walk out and go, and they monitor all the information, like what you bought and what you looked at.
Sure.
Concerned from a privacy point of view as well. They not only know what you bought, but they know what you might have bought or what you're thinking about buying, and the reality is that's okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. My knee is undergoing rehab right now, but I'm a runner. So if I search for a pair of sneakers and that happens to tell a lot of different advertisers. I'm a runner, and I get served running stuff. I'm personally really good with that. I'd much rather be served running stuff than women's apparel for the summer. And so there are benefits there, and provided it's not too creepy, and provided when I say no, they stop. I think there's a real value to that. To be served things. And there was a Netflix series I was watching probably about 2 years ago. I was watching it at my house, and I'm not much of a television person, but whatever the series was, I was really caught up on it. And I was at my daughter's house at a separate location not too long after that, and I wanted to pick up the series. And for the first time, I really experienced what a customized, scalable platform can do. And I logged onto her Netflix account to watch the series, and her Netflix account was completely different than mine, right? The homepage and the offerings were geared towards, at that time, she was probably a 26-year-old woman, and it was, the stuff she liked. It was very girly, women love stuff. That was not that all women are like that. My daughter happened to be that profile, and my stuff was documentaries of war and whatever, running and stuff like that. And I realized, wow, we both have Netflix. That's a completely different experience. And I thought, wow, those guys really have that down. And I think that's just really a benefit to customers. And there's certainly some consumers and some people that would disagree with that, but from my perspective, that is a service.
That was a service
on that. I think our industry is definitely suffering from that because somebody will come in, they will look at a car, they'll go online, and Google knows exactly what they've been looking at, but we don't.
We're not suffering from it. We're horrible at it. The average dealer website is one size fits all. And you can go to that website 27 different times, and it doesn't know who the heck you are. You may have dealt with a dealership and purchased several cars from that dealership. For the most part, the website doesn't know who you are. At Paragon, we've made some real progress there. Our website does know who you are. It'll self-populate fields. That's a benefit. It'll self-populate applications. So we're getting there, painfully slow, but we're getting there in having a customizable, scalable experience for our customers.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that information, and when you also look at the fact that the manufacturer. I mean, I had some discussions both with Honda USA, but also with Honda Canada about the data that the company I work for during the day, NABDAT, has on customers for our clients, and it was surprising just the disconnect between the OEM and the market. Even, I mean, they're using Polk data and other data, but wouldn't it be useful to know, which customer visited what location in a given market and which locations maybe they didn't buy from? I mean, just those basic touch points are really interesting. But more importantly, from a point of view of a manufacturer, to use the example of silos, wouldn't it be nice to know what we should be building based on what people actually want to buy? Not what we sold the dealer, but what the customer actually wants.
And I think
that type of customer, right?
I think a lot of these sites like Cars.com and Auto Trader have been able to do a great job manufacturing profits by selling that data, right, to OEMs and others. And with everyone buying the data, wouldn't it be great if our manufacturer, was the first to actually use that to better serve the customer in a way that's tangible to the dealers?
What a novel idea. But I had a question, though. If you're a dealer and you're worried about the OEM changing your model, how do you protect your investment in terms of, we talk a lot on the show about, the right tiles and the right building and the right footprint. And we had a dealer from New Jersey who happens to own a Cadillac dealer who was talking about investing, I think, about $2 million for the new electric Cadillac. How do you strategize to protect your investment moving forward when you may or may not have a big change from the OEM that impacts that?
Well, look at the relationship. It's the dealer, it's the OEM. Like, we're two separate entities, and to the consumer, it should be one. I think we all have to understand that the current business model, the way it's set up, is not sustainable. We've got to make it more cost effective for dealers to serve customers. You look at the output per transaction, the output per outlet for Tesla, and they've got these 2-car showrooms that are producing lots of sales. I think there's a business model for that we have these really high-tech temples to the brand, like an Apple store, but where the customers can come in and really interact with the cars, not just sit in them and then come on over to my desk, but really experience the cars. The temple to the brand would be experiential. We could create ways of having a more monogamous relationship with our customers where they really enjoy that. We do 90% of the paperwork or electric work before they come in, and they come in just to get the car, and it's a freaking fantastic experience. What if you could test drive one of these EVs in a simulator inside the showroom, but the simulator really gives you the feeling of the acceleration and drive of that particular vehicle in an urban setting or mountain setting, or whatever the setting the customers can experience. You can pick that right there. You got a fairly sophisticated way of them experiencing that customer. I think that's what.
Sorry, Brian. Did you see at NADA there was? I'm not even sure what the vendor was, but they had a simulator there with a racing simulator.
Yeah,
that sort of stuff.
We have a place in New York City. It's called the Classic Car Club, and it's a subscription-based car club for big shots to be able to drive fancy pants cars whenever they want. And you can drive a Ferrari today, a Porsche tomorrow. And I'm a member of the club, and I'm a member of the club not because I want to drive fancy pants cars, but I really love the concept of that. And being a member, I have taken out exactly 0 cars from there. I just I just respect the model. It was really more of a learning experience. But they have, in a place like this, they've got 3 simulators. I think 3 simulators upstairs in the Classic Car Club, and they cost a bunch of money. And we had a couple of race car drivers there from the team Penske, and they drove in those simulators and said it was the closest thing to driving a race car they ever had. Why don't we have that at the point of sale for Honda and for Acura? And why doesn't the manufacturer produce this in a cost-effective manner for us to better serve our customers, to create an experience that's memorable and consistent throughout the Honda and Acura stores across the country? Don't look for 100,000 square foot showroom, but look for a showroom that makes a meaningful impact on the customer. Create a temple for the brand. And so, I'm going to spend the rest of my career advocating for things along those lines. The dealers, the OEMs that think they can do without the dealers, wait till they start backing up on the port, wait till they start backing up on the boat, wait till they start backing up on the railheads, and we'll see the OEMs going to their big horses to try and help them get out of the problem that they created.
Well, and the fact is, not even Honda has enough money to pay out 25 or 30,000 dealers worldwide and turn them into their own showroom like Tesla does.
Well, Tesla started out one at a time, so they grew that. And they're able to do that, and we've got this. Why are we turning the existing dealer body into an albatross and not an advantage for distribution points? We've got the distribution points out there, and to really get together. And the National Dealer Advisory Boards for Honda, they do a good job, but I think it's time for us to really hold those men and women that make up that board and Honda accountable to what are we going to do to make an actual impact, a real impact. And the feedback that they give the OEM is great. The OEMs, all of them are slow to change, and I get it. You've got global implications. You've got 50 states with 50 separate rules. You've got 1,100 dealers with 1,100 different ways that they want to do business. So it really is like herding cats. But I think we really need to get intentional on improving the customer experience and stop looking at examples in the car business and to start looking at Apple. And we need to imagine when Apple comes out with their car, and I believe they will, what's that experience going to be like? I think it's going to be single point of contact. You're not going to have a greeter. You're not going to have a TO manager. You're not going to have an F&I manager. You're not going to have delivery coordinator. You're not going to have the things that we've found as normal in our industry. I think you'd have a single point of contact, probably some kid with a couple of pimples on his or her face, maybe a nose ring, that would be brilliant on the product, be really well trained, and be able to take the customer all the way through the transaction. And so we've, at Paragon Acura, moved to a similar model with A to Z sync, single point of contact, and we're finding some very encouraging results initially.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Any final questions, Jeff?
Really, I have no final questions. I really appreciate you taking the time, Brian. We know it's a it's a Sunday here, and that's a kind of a sacred day just for sometimes in the car business we get a break regardless of our viewpoints of life. But
No, sir. There's no rest for the weary. We were at it. I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning and emailing the team Paragon. We had a wonderful month. We finished first in the United States of America, and then planet for Honda and Acura sales. And I think 6 days we keep up with the competition. On the seventh day we go ahead. So it's been a day of work today, but work from my home office. I get a lot of productivity here, and it was great to be able to speak with you in furthering our mutual efforts to transform and be a part of the transformation of our great industry.
Thanks very much. You may also want to take a look at the story from Beaver Toyota. They sold over 400 used cars for the first time ever. And it's very interesting. It was on Clubhouse on David Long's show on Friday, where he talked about how they went from 100 used cars to 400 used cars in the space of, I think, 24 months. But more importantly, where they're going from there when they're selling 2 used cars for each 1 new car right now. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, that's again, that's success stories like that are really a great wake-up call for what's possible for all of us.
Right now, the import stores seem to be going the way of the domestics have been forever. Up here, domestic stores have always been 2 used to 1 new.
Yeah, that's nothing to brag about. It's just because the output for new cars has been terrible. Nationally here, what do we sell? 45,000 used cars and about 17,000 plus or minus new. So this 3 to 1 is the national number. So for a dealer to be 1 to 1 should be the bare minimum.
100% agree. Yeah. But it was interesting anyway from a strictly technology point of view and process point of view. They had the general manager talked on David's show about how he
I wrote it down.
Highly recommend it.
I'm a student, man. I'm a student.
Always.
Beaver Toyota.
Yeah, Beaver Toyota. If you need a connection to the manager, I've already connected to him, but I'll send you a link. It's very interesting.
But I'll be secret squirreling them this afternoon. Remember, the 7th day is the day I go ahead of the competition.
Exactly.
So we're going to look at what they're doing, and I'll share that information with my team. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have yourself a great afternoon.
Thank you, Brian. It's been a real pleasure.
Yep.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you very much.